Alright, making another economics video. I got an email from some idiot pointing me to this old Milton Friedman crapola. And of course, you know, this is quote mining, of course, when people drag up comments by people, because later Milton Friedman has made other statements when you compare different taxes and what he would prefer if he had to choose. He doesn't like any tax. So obviously he can say negative things about any tax. But the real truth is the most uncapitalistic source of income or wealth is inheritance. It's the most illegitimate, uncapitalistic mechanism through which to collect. It's like welfare. It's worse. You know, there's not even a good reason to give it to the spawn of the wealthy. There's like, they don't need it. They don't need the welfare. They don't need the free check. They don't need the free money. So it's, you know, it's certainly as far away from earn as you can get, as far as away from deserving or innovating or doing anything of use or value. You shouldn't get paid to do nothing. And that's what inheritance is, getting paid for doing nothing but falling out of a vagina. So, so I'll play that just because it's just such a horseshit answer. And this is his old answer. Like I said, he got a little smarter with time. But anyway, so this whole economy thing, so the modern mystic, yes, is completely unresponsive to any argument against his wacky theories. And he's made a couple more videos. So just for the people who give a shit about this subject, he's just wrong. He thinks debt and cash are the same thing, you know. So he thinks something that's borrowed, okay, is the same as something that you had to produce something to get. You don't get cash for doing nothing. You get cash for doing something, okay? And cash has a limited quantity. So there's only, you know, this much of that, where debt has this open-ended thing. Debt can go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but there's almost so much in principle of the cash. So let's understand, $2 trillion worth of cash, American currency in circulation. That's it, just $2 trillion, no more. And the revenue into the U.S. government per year is $2 trillion. So if we get a $4 trillion or $6 trillion worth of debt in some bank reserve account, even if we spent every bit of tax money just to pay it down, it would take us 3 years to get rid of that debt. It's an enormous amount of money. Okay, it's not a trivial thing. It's a monstrous liability. And it's a direct liability. I mean, it's direct to the economy. There's no way you can hide it or put it away or disguise it in some way, because it has to do with banks being able to function. They can't function without the money. It's their vault money, frankly. So the thing to understand is there's stuff in the economy. I mean, I've sort of been through this, but there's stuff, okay? And that can have value. All right, so stuff has value. So land and, you know, a business, different things can have value, and stuff, it's real and it's tangible. And the idea is to monetize it, to say it's worth $100, okay? So, and by saying it's worth $100, what you're really saying is it's worth 5 sheep, or it's worth, you know, 15 watermelons, or it's worth, you know, what is it worth compared to other things? And cash is doing that all the time. Cash is telling you this standard commodity, cash, this relatively reliable thing, like gold was. See, the gold standard means nothing. People think the we went off the gold standard, that was the... But no, it didn't have anything to do with anything. They were already doing fractional reserve banking without the gold standard. Gold standard has nothing to do with it. All you need is something reliable. And this is really controllable. Cash can be controlled by the government. They control how much money is in circulation, so they can control the value of everything, essentially. And everything will be monetized to this one thing. Everything will be, every kind of value, your labor or food or energy, all these things will all be demonetized in this currency, this cash value. What's its exchange rate? So you're just making an exchange rate that goes for everything. Everything in the economy goes through the one factor and is converted into how much cash is it worth. And that's it. Yeah. So it's a really good mechanism, cash, as long as you control how much of it you print. And my argument is, so far they've controlled how much they've printed. But the problem is they have created liabilities that will force the creation of new cash, and automatically. And the Fed won't be able to do anything about it. It'll be out of control before they know it hit them. So the key thing about debt is to understand that debt, holding somebody's debt, somebody's deficit, where they've borrowed money, is a good thing when you're collecting interest, right? It's good for you. And you also have the value of the asset. So if somebody brings their house in, it has value, all right, and they bring it into the lender. The lender says, well, I'll take the house. Yeah, it's got value, sure, and I'll give you cash for it. Okay, I'll give you what it's worth, all right, and I'll have some contract where I get a nice little payoff for trusting you, so to speak. But even if you fail, I've got the deed, and the deed is worth something. All right, now what's ruined the banking system isn't so much that deeds have gone bad, but the value of things has all gone bad because of the stupid stock market, right? And so what they've done is they've taken stocks and put them into accounts and said, well, here's my IBM stock, okay, give me cash for it so I can buy some more stock, right? So they've borrowed money, paying interest on the promise that they can buy another instrument on the stock market, okay, and increase. So they'll get 10% on the stock they borrowed with the borrowed money, and they're only paying 5%, okay, on the interest. So they put the IBM stock in the bank as an asset, like it's solid, and it is sort of solid, right? Over time, it does pretty well. So the bank says, why not? Okay, if somebody wants to give me their stock, I'll give them a loan on it because I have the collateral, I have the ownership, and they're the ones that have to pay me, and I'm going to make some money on the deal. And theoretically, the asshole who did it is also making money because he's going to be 5% ahead using money, okay, that it's already a stock. I mean, it's not even real money the first, you know what I mean? It's already a stock. He's bought a stock. So you can do this like an infinite number of times, you could think, right? So he takes this IBM stock and buys GM stock. He takes the borrowed money, buys the GM stock, right? And then he's going to make 10% on that GM stock, so he's going to make a profit on it. But he takes it to the bank and he puts it in the bank. And then with that, he buys some Google stock, right? And then he takes the Google stock and puts that in the bank and gets $100,000 or whatever the amount you want to make it into, and then he just buys another stock. So what's in here is really just this IBM stock was the only real value, right? The rest of it is just the value of the stock that you bought with the currency. But I'm just saying, so this is what they've done. This is leverage. So leverage is just this concept that you can borrow on a debt. You can put the IOU in. I don't even know how to describe a double IOU, but it's basically a double IOU. Well, anyway, so if one of these things goes wrong, obviously the whole thing can be catastrophic. So if you lose the value of one of these things, you don't have enough income to pay the value, and this whole chain of bullshit falls apart. But what all this does, obviously this extra buying makes all these stocks look like they're worth a lot of money because everybody's buying them, right? So they're rare, and so now you have to go into the market and pay more for them because there's not enough of them for all these people to buy because they're all buying it on debt. And all the bank has to demonstrate is to be solvent. The bank just has to say, well, I own the IBM stock, and I own the GM stock, and I own the Google stock, like they were whole houses. See, what they used to do in the old days, right? They'd buy a house, the bank would say, yeah, we'll give you a mortgage, but they were really secure about the fact that the house was actually worth what the guy paid for it. They wouldn't give somebody a mortgage for a house that was a piece of shit, right? A $400,000 mortgage on a house that they didn't think if they owned it they could resell it for $200,000. So they're like, no, you don't want to get into that mess. But they made that mistake back in 2011. They took mortgages on a bunch of houses that were worth half as much as the mortgage value. So they were pretending they had $400,000 worth of an asset because that's what the idiot paid for the house. But the real value of the house in 2011 was only $200,000. So they got killed in terms of they don't have the collateral now. It's not a collateralized loan. They have a $400,000 liability, or whatever the guy had left on the mortgage, which might be only $100,000 over the 200. So, you know, there might be 300,000 still they haven't gotten back. So they have this huge difference between how much money they're going to get back and how much money they gave out. So they gave out $400,000. They've only gotten back in $100,000, and they've lost $200,000 in their equity, the real value, their collateral. And so that's all collateral is. Collateral is just instruments you put in that you're pretending has value, and what you're pretending. And so the problem in the market is now so many people have done this leverage thing, and the stock market's gone way up, and everybody thinks they're preposterously rich because everything is so valuable because so many people have bought stocks. Well, no, they really haven't bought any stocks. They've just put it in bank accounts, all right, and pretended, okay, that the bank was really rich because the bank owns all this stock. Well, now if the stock market goes down, okay, then the banks are stuck, just like the housing market. They're stuck with, I gave somebody $400,000. My collateral is down to $200,000. I'm in big trouble financially because my assets don't match my liabilities anymore. I haven't got there's no evenness or parity. Where, like I said, the old days bankers used to have a super deal, right? They would have a house that was solid in terms of its value, and they were going to get the whole house. And they had a down payment, okay, of $30,000 or $40,000, some, a third of the value, half the value. So they were only liable for $50,000 from the person, and they already had $130,000 worth of assets. So they had a huge pile of value on this side and a tiny liability relative to that value, like 1/2 the liability for twice as much asset that they owned. So they were in a very secure position. If this guy fails, they're going to win big. And housing markets were going up, for decades. From the 50s to the 80s, there was no place that only this way. That's the only way the value of a house would go was up. So holding the house meant that even if it took 10 years or 20 years, the asset value of their collateral was going up. So they were winning even more because now the asset value of the thing they're holding as collateral is going up. Obviously, when they start doing this with stocks, the liability it starts to go down. And that's when everybody panics because you're going to have to bail all these people out because they're going to go bankrupt because they're not going to have the asset value to cover the liability. And so that's when all of these shenanigans take place to fix it. So, as I pointed out, let's go back to the Federal Reserve drawing chart. Oh, that's not the Federal Reserve. This must be it. Okay. So, in the banking crisis, where all the mortgages went bad, and they had to, I haven't even gone into Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which the government bought and is still bankrupt. Okay, so huge liability stuck with all those old mortgages. So they did the chicanery of the FDIC insurance. So FDIC insurance. They used the FDIC insurance to take, because everybody was losing money. Okay. So what they did is there's people who own this junk, right? Little mortgages. Okay. They owned a bunch of bad mortgages. These bank deals. And what the banks all did is they said, here's all this junk. Okay. Bank one says, here it is, here it is. So all the banks throw all the junk into a pile. And they turn these into financial instruments, for stock. And it absolutely has no value. It's the worst junk. They want to get rid of it. And what the government did was say, we'll guarantee that. So now the banks are off the hook. The banks get real money for these garbage assets, right? So the government pays them real money for garbage assets. And the government sells these garbage assets on the stock market, promising that if it says $10 on it, it's worth $10. Even though it's only worth 0.000001 cent, we'll guarantee it for $10. So no matter what happens to this piece of crap, we'll guarantee its price, guarantee you $10. So of course people bought it because they say, well, that's better than a bond, right? I own something that's guaranteed to go, it's guaranteed not to go down. So it's like going to Las Vegas for free. So of course they were able to sell them. And so then they could justify paying the banks because they sold this junk by guaranteeing it. And it's only because the government's guaranteed it. So they use the FDIC insurance fund, right, which is 1.4 cents on the dollar. So the fund has 1.4 cents for every dollar it's insured. That's how much it can pay back. 1.4 cents. Obviously, this is useless shit. Okay, this isn't going to meet anything in a crisis. It won't save the day. It won't do any of that crap. It's impossible. All right, so they destroyed this thing that's supposed to save the day when the bad times come. And they wiped it out by using it to insure absolute junk, stuff that are guaranteed. This has no value. It's guaranteed. It's valueless. And the government's going to be stuck because these people, when the market goes down and they want their money, they're just going to say, give me $10. And the government's going to have to give them $10, real $10. And guess what? It doesn't have it. And that's when it's really going to get messy. Okay, well, that's just one example. Didn't want to go on too much about that. So the real issue is that when the stock market goes down, all these leveraged wealthy people, the people who've bought stock, put it in the bank, bought some more stock, put it in the bank, bought some more stock, put it in the bank, and the banks are doing this too. The banks are doing exactly the same thing. So they're just using the same money, okay, to keep making a new loan with the same borrowed money. So they borrow the money once. So they go to the bank, borrow the money, say, please, please, please lend me some money. Okay, and the bank falls for it and says, okay, we'll lend you the money. Maybe at a higher interest, at 9% interest. But the guy who's borrowing the money is sure his stock is going to go up. So it's okay because he's going to make 12% in the market. And so he'll be able to pay his 9% liability, right? So no problem. He can pay the first loan, all right? So he keeps that one solvent. And then he just takes what he bought from the market, puts it back in again, and now he gets a better rate, okay, because he's paying off this other one, and now he has collateral. Now he's actually putting something in, right? He's putting real money in this time because it's a real stock, okay? Even though it's paid for with borrowed money, it's considered a real stock. And like I said, they can just keep doing this ad infinitum, really. I mean, it's an insanely silly loophole. And the only thing that stops it is that the banks are regulated, okay? And the regulators say you have to have a certain percentage of real collateral in your vault. Some real money somewhere. Somewhere there has to be some real value. And what they're doing is, like I said, they're counting stocks as real value. So they're counting the preposterously inflated stock price, okay? So the S&P and all that kind of stuff. It's preposterously inflated valuations, and they're counting them as hard assets and saying, there, I met my 5% reserve requirements because I own IBM stock and it's valued at $7 trillion because, the stock market went up. So obviously you can see if the stock market goes down, all of a sudden they're way below these reserve numbers. They're down to 0%. They don't have any reserves, and they're financially considered bankrupt. And they can't let that happen to the banks. So the banks say, so the market goes down, the banks panic because their reserve numbers are going to hell, because their reserves are technically a bunch of financial instruments. They're a bunch of stocks and bonds. Okay, they're not houses even. And if they are houses, they're shitty ones, right? So they don't have anything good in their reserve account. They don't own anything of real value. They own instruments, okay, that were purchased on borrowed money. All right, so anyway, so obviously when the stock market goes down, banks are in panic because they can't function with a market going down. This racket of borrowing to buy stock only works if stocks go up. If stocks go down, this can't work at all. It's got no hope. So the markets have to keep going up. And so now the government steps in because it can't let Bank A go bankrupt, because that'll cause Bank B to go bankrupt, to Bank C, and blah, blah, blah. And it'll also cause that reserve account. See that reserve thing over there? You can't really get my hand to the... Oh, there. I just have to point that way. That's not really, my arm doesn't work. Bad rotator cuff. Anyway, so you can see that it went up like $1 trillion, and then it goes up $1 trillion, and then it goes up $1 trillion, you know, and you get up to $4 trillion. And so now they're saying, right, to solve this coronavirus crisis, they're going to add another 1.5 trillion. So we can watch that. You know, we'll watch this chart, and you're going to see that chart do another one of these big lumps. Okay, it's going to go up another big giant $1.5 trillion. Huge amount of money. And all the government's going to do is the same thing it does every time these crises happen. It's going to say to the banks, give me all your junk, you know, the stuff that you lost money on, and I'll buy it. So, but it's really, they hide it in the idea that they're going to buy old treasuries that have a higher interest liability. So they're going to buy the old treasuries off the banks, the ones they're holding, and they're not going to pay them in real money, though. They're just going to tell the bank A to purchase it, right? So this is the racket. So this is what you'll understand. Understand how this happens, where they don't technically print any money. They just print more debt. So it's just another racket, right? Because they hide it. So what they tell Bank A. So Bank A, they say, Bank A, go out and buy a treasury with one of your checks. Okay, so Bank A writes a check for, you know, $1 billion or whatever. Buys the treasury from bank. It's going to buy it from somebody who holds it. So let's say Bank B holds it. So Bank B is going to get the bank check from A. So it has a check from A, and it gives A the bond, right? Well, however to draw that. So here's the bond. So it made a deal. It got a check from A, and the bond now A has the bond. Well, A just gives the bond to the government because that's who told it to buy it, so it doesn't really care. It's sort of irrelevant who actually has the bond in their vault. Just really doesn't make any difference. But anyway, the bond's a liability to the federal government. It's a debt the government has to pay. So it has value because it's supposed to be convertible into cash. You know, so this bond, you show up to the government and say, give me my money, they're supposed to give you your money. But, right, the government can't do that to itself. Right? It can't show up and pay itself for its bond. You know, government can't say, look, I got a bond, here's my bond, give me the money for the bond. You know, it's circular, can't work. But anyway, so let's just follow this check. So the check from Bank A, okay, is going to go into the Federal Reserve. This is what the Federal Reserve does every day. This was their original function. All they were supposed to do is take checks that went from, you know, they're like, you know, Bank C, okay, Bank C would give it a check, you know, to Bank A, and so it was just for exchanging checks. And so all the checks would go into the Federal Reserve, and it would be decided what Bank A owes Bank B, and Bank C, and Bank D. So they would just figure out who has what checks, and what equals what. So a lot of times it would just kind of all equal out. I mean, Bank B has just as many checks against Bank A, blah, 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 blah. But the point would be is in this reserve account, all the banks have some money. Okay, so whatever you owe, if Bank B owes Bank A, then their little line would go down lower, and Bank B's line would go up higher. So that's not complicated at all, right? You can just get that they were just for equalizing. So that's all the Federal Reserve did until 2009. It just exchanged checks for the banks. And so it just increased the amount in B's vault. This would be B vault, A vault, C vault, D vault. They all have a little vault at the Federal Reserve. And all they do is if A owes B, then they just take, or D, then they just take some money out of A and give it to D. And that's all it's for. So what they've done now, though, is that when this bond check comes from Bank A, the Federal Reserve has already decided, oh yeah, that's that fake check that we wrote. All right, so it puts it in A's account. I mean, Bank A wrote it. So it doesn't tell Bank A, you have to produce the money, but it puts the money in Bank B's column. So it puts the money in Bank B's column. So even though it didn't take it from Bank A, it put it in Bank B as a liability. But the feds are saying, we know we did this deal, right? We know what this is for. This was for this bond, and this is just a deal we're making with you guys, the banks, and we know you can't use this money, right? See, that's why this money never leaves. Even though, see, this isn't the government's money. This is the bank's money. Why wouldn't the banks pull all this money? They have trillions of dollars in these reserve accounts. Why wouldn't they take that money out and actually buy stocks with real cash if it was their money, right? The banks wouldn't sit there and say, just leave the cash there. I love having a big giant pile of cash in the Federal Reserve. It's doing absolutely nothing, collecting no interest, collecting nothing. Of course they wouldn't do that. So anyway, this is technically the bank's money because they did write the check and they do have the bond. But it's really the government bought the bond by just increasing the reserve amount in the account. But it's clearly just borrowed money. The government really just said, we'll borrow the money, okay? We're going to pay you back, so it's in your account. We all know that you bought it, okay? So we'll take care of it when necessary in the future. Because what in the future we're going to plan to do, see, the plan is, the argument is, in the future, the Fed will just buy it back. They'll just buy the bond back into the market again. They'll release the bond. What they'll do is they'll take the bond and put it on the bond market and collect the money, okay, and then wipe this out by giving the bank the cash. So that's what they'll eventually do, is sell the bond and give the money to Bank B because it's the one that wrote the check, and that'll wipe this out. But anyway, so it's just a way of borrowing money without printing a bond. So they're just buying stuff off the market. Now, when they buy stuff off the market, this part is, everybody should be able to understand this kind of stuff. If you have cash, if you've sold everything or something, you own something. So all these markets, so you got food market, you got the, whatever you call it, commodity markets, you got gold, you got oil, and you got stocks. And stocks can be all of those things, of course. But if I own some stocks and I sell them, right, then I've converted them into some sort of cash equivalent in the bank. That is, I have at least a bank check. And the point is that I don't want to just hold the bank check because that can't make me any money. So the likelihood is I'm going to try to find some other place to put my money. So when one of these things goes down, right, because people say, ooh, this is not the time to own this shit, then it's likely that this other stuff goes up. So when one goes up in value, one goes down in value, the others usually go up in value somewhere. Somewhere you can see where the money had to go back into the system somewhere. They had to buy something because owning cash isn't going to get you very far. You're not going to make any money owning cash. Now, the only time that'll help you is if everything's going down. Okay, then you're better off being neutral. And that's sort of like it is when the markets go bad. It hasn't gone back in yet. So, but you can see how there's a tendency to just move it around between these markets. To just, you sell something here, you buy something there. So something's going up and something's going down. It's all some sort of equal market in some respects. The catch is, when the stock market goes down, the value of all the people that own it, so if somebody sells off 10% of the market, then the value of everything else in here is now less. So a stock that was worth $100 is now only worth $80. And then we're back to this argument about the equity, in somebody's account. So even if you thought of like a personal citizen putting the stuff in a drawer somewhere, his stocks that he owns, the drawer gets less valuable. As the stock market goes down, what's in the drawer is less and less convertible into less and less cash. So he can only convert it into $70 instead of $100. And so now, because of that lowering of the value of what's in that drawer, he can't take the money in that drawer and sell it for the same value to buy more of this other stuff. So the ability to keep all of these things going up gets harder and harder as one of them starts really crashing. because there's a lot of equity in all those markets. Trillions of dollars start degrading into billions of dollars. So somebody's getting poorer. But because of the way they've engineered the system, they don't want any of the rich people to be poor. So they're essentially finding cheats, ways to cheat all these markets. So when they go down, they come to the rescue and reinflate the price again. So essentially the government has gotten into the business of rescuing these markets to keep the rich rich. And that's all they're doing. They're just keeping the rich owners of the markets, the rich owners of the capital, they're keeping them alive by borrowing money from the American citizens. Period. And it's money the American citizens can't pay back. There's no method for it. And if anything ever, like I said, you really push this system and it crashes, cash won't be worth anything. So the Modern Mystic made some comment like, yes, go long on the American dollar. What prospect do you have that America is not going to be the first country to start pumping dollars? Because they're going to have to. Who's got the worst liabilities? Is hard to say. What country is the most bankrupt? They're all preposterously bankrupt. But I don't think any currency is going to be is going to save your day. And things like gold in a bad market, I don't think are going to save your day. I'd say go long on oil if you can get it cheap enough. That's always going to have... Well, see, that can go down to $25 a barrel. It did it before. So you got to be a little careful. But yes, stuff with, that has Twinkies. Buy a million Twinkies. That stuff, it's always going to be value in processed food. But anyway... But yes, cash only has value until they have to print it. So once this starts crashing and they can't just borrow more money, realistically. I mean, they can keep doing this reserve account thing, I guess, right? They can just keep pretending the banks are really, really rich when they're not. But the whole point is if the banks are desperate, they're going to start wanting the money that's in that reserve account. And what's the government going to give them? It doesn't have any cash. So it'd have to print it. And again, the FDIC insurance, insuring a bunch of junk means that when people want real money for that junk, the government gets nothing. It gives out the cash and gets nothing in return. So it loses cash. And that's the liability of the FDIC insurance. All right, so let's go to the Milton Friedman horseshit in this context. All right, so somebody asked him a very intelligent question, some hippie from the 60s, 70s. Isn't this whole system sort of a racket because it's all about where you're born and who you're born to, whether you will have the tools to be able to play in the economy, because wealth gives you a safety net to play with. Wealth means that you can do the William Randolph Hearst thing. You can lose $1 million a year and it's not going to bother me, right? I can be in business and have competitors, and I can outcompete them by just having more liquid assets than them, being richer than them. And so even though I'm not a better businessman, if I'm a richer one, I can drive the other guy out of business. I can fail, and I can afford to fail, where he can't, because he has to pay for his kids' college and pay for other stuff. He can't afford to lose money, So wealth gives you a huge advantage in fighting the capitalistic battle. It's just a fact that it's a huge liability in keeping it an honest fight. So legacy is destructive. So if this was a gladiator war and you were trying to make really great gladiators, you really would want them, not to be able to collect the tools from all the other gladiators. Like they defeat a gladiator and they get to keep all the best swords and all the best shields. Because now it's not about the gladiator, it's about how much stuff through legacy he's acquired. And now he's just become stronger only because he has better tools. You want it to be about the gladiators, right? Especially if you're breeding them. You want to breed the better ones. So anyway. But that's the physics of it. And so if you know they're cheating to take advantage, and you know that all they're done is leverage, or they've done some other bullshit, very high risk behaviors, really stupid things that they got lucky and got away with it. Why would you want to reward that?
Well,
I mean, Donald Trump went bankrupt 6 times, and he played the system. And that's all he did. He didn't show that he knows how to be a good businessman. He showed that he knows how to work the system. And that he doesn't even have to know how to work the system, that he was capable of buying a lawyer good enough to work the system.
And the question is, what is the way, what is the system which will offer those people who are so unlucky as to be born without good positions, what is the system which will offer them the greatest opportunity?
Fairness, right? So he always, Milton Friedman always wants to make it an argument between welfare checks and earning it. And no, the argument is between earning it and getting paid for what you earned. You worked, you innovated, you do all that kind of stuff, and you get rewarded proportional to your contribution, proportional to your sacrifice even. How much of your physical body did you risk at your job? How much of your time, how much of your mental sanity with some jobs like being coroners or something. I mean, it's got to wear on you, being a nurse or something. And obviously you should be paid commensurate to what the job is demanding from you, and that would be called fairness. I think fairness would be a really great idea, not a system that rewards cheaters and thieves and crooks and then creates this idiocy of saying legacy is good. Yes. And again, I've made these arguments so many times. If we really believe that legacy was great, then why don't we just abolish the Olympics and just give the trophies to the spawn? Or have the spawn do the Olympics as if they're the best athletes in the world when we know they're not. They could be 500 pounds overweight. It doesn't matter because their father was an athlete, right? So it doesn't matter what kind of condition the kid's in. He doesn't have to earn it. We'll just have a competition among their spawn and just say, yes, it's a closed system. We're not interested in finding the best athletes from the world anymore. No, we're just interested in what's the best legacy. That's it.
Well, one possible way of redistributing the wealth without affecting the incentives to earn as much income as possible is simply to have a 100% inheritance tax.
Yeah, well, see, you don't need to have 100% inheritance. You need 70% would be fine. Anything high would be fine, because you know that clearly if the idea is we want to incentivize earning it, we want to take the capital and put it in front of the horses that are most capable of doing something with the resources. We don't want to put all the capital in front of some loafy spawn of the rich, okay, who hasn't shown any initiative. He just plays golf. Yeah, he went to Harvard, he did this, and he got an education, but he's not using it for anything. He's just chasing hookers with billions of dollars. He's throwing it away in Las Vegas or some other horse shit. He's not doing anything productive with the capitalist incentive. He's pissing it away.
But since that won't affect the incentives, it's only after the person's dead anyway.
Yes, it won't affect the incentives unless you're retarded, right? We know that there's been plenty of billionaires, whatever his name is, the guy who's at least third place as the richest man in the world doesn't have any kids. So obviously there's lots of people who would be the same person they would have been whether they had kids or didn't have kids. They still would have been the same person they were. So this is all, Bill Gates made his fortune long before he had kids. So this is all just horse shit.
I beg your pardon. I'm afraid, I don't know the family you come from.
What would that have to do with the point? See, so again, he wants to turn this into what family you come from. You are who the family you are, so I should look up your ancestors and find out what kind of assholes they were and decide you are that asshole? You are your father? You are your grandfather? Is that the way you want to play the game, douchebag? I don't think anybody wants to play the game that way. So they're just horse shit. What family you come from? How is that a response to the simple point? If you're going to have a rational tax, what would be the most rational thing to tax? It'd be the most rational thing is the unearned income. So if you can find an unearned income, that's the one to tax.
But as you grow up, you will discover that
what a pile of horse shit. Yes, fuck you. That guy's never going to discover what you just said. Never. It's never going to make any sense to him at all.
This is really a family society.
Right, so it's a country of families. We're just gangs. The blues, the cribs, the reds, the blue, whatever. And yes, if you're from the wrong family, you're out of the game. Too bad. You don't get to play. It's only a game between us, the Friedmans and the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and the Kennedys. And yes, they all change their name. It becomes Shriver or some other stupid name, right? But it's the same fortune, and it gets to just make these little elitist people that get to own all this shit and do all this leverage and play all these fucking goddamn games. And that's 0.01% of the population. And they get to own everything, and everybody else is out of luck. Everybody else is eating gruel. And that's the system these assholes are defending.
An individual society. We tend to talk about an individualist society.
Yeah, that's right. Every single thing we do is based on individual merit. Every single fucking thing we invent, okay? We don't give Oscars out. Well, there is some nepotism in the Oscars, but right, it's frowned upon. It looks ugly and messy, whenever that does happen, because it doesn't look earned, right? And sports and all this stuff. None of that's family. What are you talking about, family? It's not a family business, okay? Being an NBA star, being all these things. There's no family business. Theater, the arts. You don't instantly get to be an artist because your father was an artist. Show me the example of the family artists. Are there any more Michelangelos? Are there any relatives of Michelangelo doing great sculptures? No, there aren't. So everywhere else, we force you to have the personal initiative. We force you to have the personal skills. We test you personally. We do not let you ride on your family name. That is not how Americans think. That's not even how the fucking idiotic rednecks who listen to this and say, oh yeah, what a great argument. That's not how they live their life. They don't think it like it, oh yeah, I'm a McCoy, and he's one of those huckleberries. We huckleberries, we McCoys hate the huckleberries. Who the fuck does that but a moron?
Society, but it really isn't. It's a family society.
Well, bull fucking shit. If I go out and survey the average person, they really don't want the liability of their family to be, they don't want to be stuck in any family rut. No, thank you. They would like every opportunity to do better than their fucking family.
And the greatest incentives of all, the incentives that have really driven people on.
Bullshit. So this is just psychobabble bullshit. And it's demonstrated that this has nothing to do with human psychology. Right? He's going to say some crap that we do it for our children. We wouldn't have $40 trillion worth of their debt. Credit cards, just a whole pile of credit cards that we're shoving in their pockets right now. A bunch of senior citizens saying, you pay for me, pay for me, pay for me. What the fuck? So it isn't in anybody's mindset this, oh, I did it for the children. I did it for the future. Nobody's doing that. It's just such a fucking glaring lie.
Have largely been the incentives of family.
Oh, see, there he goes. That's the incentive, family. I love the future so much that I'm going to spend all your money and sign a contract forcing you into slavery because I love you so much. We love the future so much that we sacrifice so much for the future. Right? We're seeing here on the crust of global warming that requires just a little bit of reasoning to figure out that maybe we should spend a little bit of money on figuring out how to sink carbon. Okay? We ought to be making some little carbon sinking machines, to try to catch up, try to get up to speed here because we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. It's going to get a little messy, a little swampy. Right? So we're right on the brink of that. We're on the brink of peak oil in the sense that we've used up all the easy-to-use energy, most of it, and the rest of the world where most of the people live, they want the same privileges we have. They want to be able to, spew a bunch of black smoke out of their little stovepipes too. They want to play the game the same way we played it. And we're saying, no, you can't. Okay, new rules. Ha, 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 ha. You don't get to have lots of energy.
Creation, a family establishing their families on a decent system.
Okay, so again, how could somebody think this is a great argument? The family argument. Who could think so? And this is it now in the context too. I mean, 50% of the people, the little enterprising people, are frickin' unmarried and childless. Well, at least unmarried.
The effect of 100% inheritance tax. The percent of 100% inheritance tax
would mean that all of these stock values would stay rational because the only way to buy them would be with money okay, that you couldn't inherit. So you have to earn it. That means you'd have to do something productive to get the cash to buy the businesses. All right. And so it would incentivize people to do the work because the prices would be so much better. I mean, Google would be, within 10 people's reach. 10 people could put all their money together and say, let's buy Google. And they could actually do it because there would be real value in real work. And working people would have the capital of the country instead of all of it being held by 1%. That 1% can disappear and we'll lose the huge giant fat weight and we'll be free. We'll be floating so free without their oppression. They have everybody in slavery to their indulgence, to their waste, to their high maintenance. They are consuming so much more than the rest of the world.
Is to encourage people to dissipate their wealth in high living.
So there it is. In high living. No, the greatest thing you can do is for people to dissipate their wealth, creating infrastructure, creating clean water, good, efficient power distribution, internet, houses, roofs. That's the kind of stuff we want to invest in. We don't want to invest in yachts. We don't want people working doing millions of dollars of work over their lifetime to build something that only 3 people will ever enjoy and that will sink and rot. We want people to be working on things that are valuable to all of us, not valuable to 2 people. We want people working on making a park. We don't want people working to make a penthouse for 2 people. We don't want to squander the labor on crap that only 2 or 3 people enjoy. That's called waste and stupid and moronic.
What's the harm in that?
The harm in that is that where do you get the factories? Where do you get the machines?
What do you mean? We don't have any problem. They'll be all very economically viable. We can all afford to buy the machines and do all that stuff because the only cash that'll have value is cash related to work, not cash related to nothing. So our cash, the cash of the working person, won't be diluted by the cash of the lazy, loafing bullshitters. They're diluting the value of your money every day. That extravagance dilutes the value of your dollar.
Where do you get the capital investment? Where do you get the incentive to improve technology? If what you're doing is to...
So again, like somehow the masses won't create demand for new technology. They don't want a VCR. They don't want a smartphone. They don't want any of this new technology. The masses aren't what drove that. It was only the rich people who drove the consumption. If it wasn't for the rich people, us regular people would have never said, please make me a smartphone. We would have said, no, we don't want that. We don't want any technology. We don't want a computer. So this moron actually thinks that somehow rich people drove IBM to make PCs. It wasn't because IBM knew we could sell it to regular people. No. They were always thinking, I can always sell these to rich people.
Establish a society in which the incentive is for people who, if they by accident accumulate some wealth, to waste it in frivolous entertainment.
Yeah, but the point is that would be fine if they wasted it all, if they spent it all, okay, and were done being rich. The point is they sit on the capital and they take the wealth, the income derived from the capital, okay, and so they have a constant supply of income for doing no work. That means everybody else's labor is diluted.
You know, the thing is that the thing that is amazing that people don't really recognize is the extent to which the market system has, in fact, encouraged people and enabled people.
The naval people? Who are they? What we know it encouraged was people like William Randolph Hearst. It encouraged people to come up with these gimmicks like Google. Just like Google, right? Google did a William Randolph Hearst, even though we already knew about Citizen Kane and how bad that shithead was, Hearst, and what a racket he played. Where he basically said to all his competitors, I can lose $1 million for 100 years. Okay, so go ahead and try to compete with me because you're going to lose. Because I don't have to make any money. All right, I'm just going to drive you out of business. Google gave it away for free for 2 years. How did it do that? All right, how did it pay for the servers? How did it pay for all this stuff? Oh, because it was a racket, right? They put the money, the venture capitalists put the money in advance because they knew they were going to get the money back when they took everybody else out of all the competition died. Alta Vista and all the other Yahoo, all the other companies had to pay real bills, had to pay their employees, didn't have fake money to do it with, didn't have an endless supply of capital. But Google arranged a racket, where it could go public and create this whole gigantic pile of cash, this stupid gimmick. And that's what he wants to reward, gimmicks, cheats. YouTube, an overt fraud, okay? A company that had nothing to do with people YouTubing or doing any of that crap. It had to do with stealing copyrighted content and having the thief be somebody they didn't have to take responsibility for. And it's clear that was their intent, just to sell it for a big pile of money because it had eyeballs going to it, because it was all stolen content. These are the rackets he thinks are a good idea.
To work hard and sacrifice in what I must confess I often regard as an irrational way for the benefit of their children.
So he's saying, the rich are irrational, but they're doing it for the benefit of their children. Again, just complete horseshit, right? I mean, there's just no evidence. The suicide rate among wealthy people is, I think, higher than among the poor. They're obviously not doing it for their kids. Their kids are as crazy and loop-de-doo as they are, and as useless as they are, as incapable and incompetent as they are.
One of the most curious
living with a safety net gives you a fake concept of reality. And that's what all these people have. They think their money is going to buy them immunity. And it doesn't in some respects. Obviously it does in all respects when it comes to manipulating other people.
Things to me, an observation, is that almost all people value the utility which their children will get from consumption higher than they value their own.
Oh, so isn't that amazing? So we have every evidence of exactly the opposite being the truth. Every evidence that people value their comfort much more than the future's function. They will sacrifice real future benefit to short-term gain. Make it pay now. I don't want to invest in future technologies and future things that pay for themselves over 50 years. They're totally uninterested. They want it to pay now. That's the obvious and clear fact.
Here are parents who have every reason to expect that their children will have a higher income than they ever had.
So they have every reason to expect exactly the opposite, because that's what the statistics demonstrate. And they surely demonstrated it decisively back in 1970. It was a decisive fact that only 3% rise out of their poverty. 3%. Okay? They have no reason to expect that the next generation, that their families will gain power and be one of the big players. Because it is a rich man, poor man world. That's the way they want it. Okay? The rich need it to be that way.
And they scrimp and save in order to be able to leave something for their children. I think you are sort of like a bull in a china shop if you talk about the 100% inheritance tax.
Yes, I'd say 100% was going further than he needs to. Give them a few $1 million. Fine. Go ahead. Give them cheats. Allow them to cheat in preposterous ways. So you're having a horse race, or you're having a competition to be first baseman at Yankee Stadium, right? And you let the guy who's the whatever Manly's whatever his grandkid or something. You let him drop the ball 5 times because, he's privileged. So he's allowed to drop it 5 times. And you don't let anybody else drop it 5 times. But it's okay if he drops it 5 times. Well, yeah, that's enough of a cheat. I mean, don't cheat all the way, right? You don't need to give the kid $5 trillion or $5 billion or any of that kind of crap, right? So a few $1 million in free cheat money, a safety net of $2 million isn't enough of a cheat for a human being. I mean, it's a gigantic advantage over 98% of the people walking on the earth. If you have $2 million in the bank, you have a huge advantage in dealing with all the people you'll ever interact with. You're going to have a huge advantage. a huge advantage regarding 98% of the other people you're going to interact with. That $2 million guarantees you power in any kind of interaction you're going to have in the world. And that's not enough of a fucking cheat? These rich people are so fucking feeble and broken and incompetent that they can't get by on a few $1 million. They have to have billions. This is, it's such horse shit. And some asshole thinks this is a good argument. That this makes rational sense somehow. That this crap, this absolute crap, makes sense.
It's having no incentive effect. It would destroy a continuing society. It would
Okay, it's just more nonsense. No, it wouldn't destroy any such thing. The children of the company owner would have to earn money and buy the company if they want to buy the company. But the company goes on the free market, okay? People can buy it. The company still runs. The company still does everything it did. Nothing's broken. Nothing's destroyed. None of that. There's huge incentive for regular working people to say, I want to be able to buy that company. I want to run that company. I'll save some money so I can get some equity so I can buy that company. Because I know I can run it even better. So huge incentives to be innovative, to go out and do the work instead of giving it to a slob who never earned it. How does giving things to slobs who never earned it make any sense at all?
destroy a society.
So that's it, yeah. Lame, weak puke. I mean, that is just so bad. Ugh. The preposterous defense of wealth. We're gangs, and us gang has it. See, this is what leads to all this racism and stuff too. Look, being Jewish is not a race, right? We know it's a theory. Okay, some people take the I'm Jewish because I have the Jewish theory, and some people are like, yeah, I'm Jewish, so what? Genetically, who cares? So I would argue, yes, who cares what your genetics is? I care about your ideology. And if your ideology is that you're the chosen people and you should run the world, then yeah, fuck you. This whole idea that there's these privileged people are somehow superior to us and they genetically bestow their superiority on their fucking spawn. The lie couldn't be more obvious when these big, huge Rockefeller fortunes and the DuPont money, for example, huge pile of money, and it went to a bunch of psychotic lunatics. Psychotic. They were murderers and rapists and all kinds of psychoses in that family. And we gave them all of that capital. No, for no good reason. And took it out of the carrot stream. Again, there's only so many carrots. The carrots are the stuff, the value in the world. And you want those carrots to be in front of all the horses. Not just the 5 over here. That's stupid. Alright, so that's all there is. Alright. So, enough of a video, but it's the simplest fix to the system. Legacy wealth it breaks the invisible hand. I mean, where's the rational argument explaining how inheritance doesn't break the invisible hand? The invisible hand is supposed to be merit. Merit fixes the system because people have to earn it. So you broke the invisible hand by having a non-merit system. And most of the wealth right now is owned by people who didn't earn it. Just a fact. So all the people who say they're rich have millions of dollars. Most of them, the vast majority of them, never did anything to earn the money. They never earned any of it. It's just a fact. And who could think that's a great capitalist system? Not earning. Inheriting. No, only a privileged class of bigots and asswipes and fucking crooks and slimy thieves could defend what's going on. I earned it because my daddy did? Who could say that, without their nuts just falling off? Who with real testicles that has any kind of integrity as a human being could walk up to somebody else and say, yeah, I earned it because my father did it for me. Yeah, he won the race. I didn't win any races. I didn't do shit. Yeah, but I earned it. You're just such nutless, weak-ass pieces of shit to defend it. Alright. Done my job. So, fuck you, emailer. I just drilled the gigantic. There's such a big asshole behind Milton Friedman right now. His ass is ginormous. I know he's dead, but whatever. He was brain dead long before he was dead. So, fuck you.